Hello everybody, my name is Nairi. This is a channel supporting adopters and foster carers, and I'm an adopter of two sons, and today we're going to talk about additional needs, special needs, the twists and turns that happen when you have adopted or foster children that actually need that additional support and help at school, at home, or wherever it might be. And I'm just about to get interrupted by a cat that isn't going to leave me alone, so let's see how that goes. So I wanted to share my experiences, and what I will say at the beginning of the video, this is just my experiences and what I feel I need to share with you so you can understand how things might be. But I'm going to get rid of the cat, hang on. I think the cat has gone. So I want to share these experiences with you because perhaps it's been a bit of a shock to me at how difficult life has been to get the support and help that my boys have needed. So the boys that we had were very neglected and abused when they first came to us, and they had already signs of having developmental issues. So we always knew from the beginning that if we took them on as adopted sons, that we might well have lots of things that we needed to sort out. But I guess what I wasn't expecting was the fact that we might have to fight for that help. During the whole of primary school, because we had them from the age of 2 and 3, people worked with us to get things in place. I would say that even then, we probably understood that our sons were struggling a lot more than what they presented with. So that's the first thing to say, is that actually they can put on a really good front to please adults. They're very good at doing that, particularly the older one. And so with the older one, he would make sure that he was not going to raise his head above the parapet. He was always going to be making sure that he was seen and not heard, and that has been a real problem throughout the whole of the education system, because it looks like he understands what's happening, and he looks like he understands what's being required of him. And I feel like in school it was always very much, well, he's making progress. So even if we question that, and to say that yes, he is making progress, but he isn't actually catching up in any way, I never really felt that school would want to acknowledge that actually that was the truth. And I still don't understand that now. I understand that there has to be assessments done, and that it could potentially look bad on the school if there isn't enough progress being made. But this, for me, is about the child, and this is where I get really frustrated. We've had to keep on coming back and saying, but why is that not happening? Why can't that be put in place? And I feel like, well, there's a system, and they have to fit in and around the system, particularly if they don't have a diagnosis of anything. So it could well be that people will say, well, we know they have childhood trauma, so they need therapeutic input. They've had loads of therapeutic input all the way through primary years. They've had loads of it, and still really the progress has not been that amazing, particularly with the older one. And the other thing to say about that as well is his perspective of himself, because he knows he's trying really hard, and we know he's trying really hard. So as soon as you say to him, but you're really kind to him, but you say, well, actually, things are difficult for you at school, and maybe you're not understanding, then he will then automatically blame himself, which of course we are not doing in any stretch of the imagination. So he's always wanting to please, and you go through the primary years, and in your heart of hearts, when you see every single parents' evening, that things really aren't good. But you don't want to disappoint your son, who you know is working really hard. You don't want to challenge the teachers, because you know they're working really hard. But the reality is, he needs more support, and as the years go by, that becomes more apparent that he needs more support. I feel that I've always known that, and that in many ways I feel like I've let him down. I feel like I should have fought harder in the primary years to say, well, actually, he is way behind, and why are we not looking at specialist education? Why are we not putting things in place? But you always want to feel that your children are not your adopted sons. They're not your foster children, especially if you've gone for long-term foster placement, but they're just children, and they're working really hard, and they're doing really well for where they've come from, because that was also the thing, from where they came from, because when they came to us, there was no speech and just so many developmental needs and issues that they had come such a long way that nobody wants to turn around and go, well, yes, you have, but it's not good enough. So you don't keep on and on about it. The cat is keeping on and on about coming in here. So then, you know, he moves into the bigger school, the older school, and then everything comes crashing down around him. And the other thing to say about additional needs or special needs is sometimes, like Kat really wouldn't give up. They struggle so much with friendships, and that demoralizes them because they try really hard to, he's tried really hard to make good friendships, and he's been able to keep some, but actually children look at him, and to a certain extent my other son as well, but a lot with him because he's quiet and he's timid, and I think, brilliant, we've got an amazing target here. We can make ourselves feel better because we're more intelligent. We know how to do things, we know how to communicate better, we're getting better results in our tests. So do you know what, we'll make him feel as small as he possibly can be. And that's our experience of him moving up to the bigger school, that children that he has tried to make friendships with, or even had friendships before with, now because they want to impress their peers, are trying to make him look as insignificant and small as he can possibly be, as if he needs that after his start in life. And this is where I might get upset, and I apologise if I do. I cannot understand why people want to pick on vulnerable people, and it's been really, really hard to try to get things in place for him. So hard. I'm not saying that's the fault of the teachers. I'm probably saying it's the fault of the system, and I feel that my eldest son in a way has been failed, really failed. And we've got to the point now where just recently, which is probably what's triggered this video, he's had a huge dip and started to have real physical effects, which we didn't know whether it was anxiety or not. I mean, that's always a possibility. But he was so poorly, we thought there was actually something wrong with him. And so I had to take him to the doctors a couple of times to have an ECG and blood pressure done and things. And actually, once I started to talk to him and try to unpick, it turns out that he is becoming aware that it could be anxiety. To have that level of anxiety because children pick on him and refer to him as being adopted. I mean, he has let them know of his own accord that he is. Pick on him because he hasn't got a high ability. And to be in a system where the school is too big to be able to deal with that very quickly. And when you do try to come forward to deal with it, he risks, of course, being actually picked on even more. So he doesn't obviously always want to come forward and report, because that was the response. Well, why hasn't he said anything? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? And he hasn't said anything because he thinks it's going to get beaten up. Now, I want to rewind that a little bit though and say, please don't think that the school he's going to is the worst thing ever. I think sometimes the fact that he has so much childhood trauma and so many triggers from the past means that if there is a risk factor that he is aware of, then that risk factor is going to be blown up out of all proportion, and he's actually going to struggle to not have the triggers at school and sometimes at home. And so we have talked recently about what those triggers are, and there are so many triggers for him that to get through a day is like just waiting for the cork to pop, because he's anxious about who might be walking past the house. Who could access the garden, whether there's a stranger that's moved in up the road when he's in school, whether that bully who bullied somebody else could then possibly think about bullying him, and so it goes on and so it goes on. So I'm not saying that this is all due to the education system. I am saying, of course, that it's partly due to childhood trauma and the two things kind of blowing up together. But the fact is that to be able to prove that he needs more, to be able to get the help he needs, it's been like going to the dentist, and nobody likes going to the dentist. It's been super difficult. The amount of assessments that we have had to have to prove his level of need. This video would go on forever. He's had speech and language assessment. He's now had 2 educational psychologist assessments. He's been to genetics. He's had dyslexic screening. It goes on. I mean, there's about 6 different reports, and all of this was necessary. All of this was necessary to get an EHCP, which in this country, that's what it's called. You may have something called a Statement of Educational Needs. And we've had to go through all this. This has taken it's taken about 2 years, maybe a bit more, to get to where we are now. From where we started to say, okay, people are saying he's doing well, but look, he can't understand not even maybe a tenth of what's going on in the classroom. So he might be doing okay, as in he's not complaining, he's not climbing the walls, but he's not doing okay. This last week or two, I've gone through the whole scenario with him. You can stay at home and I'll homeschool you, but I'll be honest with you, it'll be more about life skills rather than actually teaching you, maths and English. It's going to be more practical. Ease your way back into school and we'll try and help you with, a lesser timetable. Or you can, I can't even remember what there was a third option. I can't even remember it because my head is so befuddled. And so anyway, he's eased his way back into school. He's done one morning, he's gone back in, and even that, they couldn't get it right. We'd let everybody know it was a morning and what we were doing. Communication didn't get through, so he was really stressed when he came out at lunchtime because nobody remembered that he could come home. I had to go and pick him up, and he was just stressed. And I just think, why do some children have to go through so much? He's been through enough already. So anyway, we look like we're progressing, and we did actually go and have a look at a small unit, which would be a special educational needs unit for him. He clearly doesn't want change. I don't blame him. He doesn't know what he's going into. But my husband and I really liked it, and I hope that he will get a chance to have a look at it as well. But again, the system for us is you go through years of proving that he might need special educational needs, and then on the day, in this hour interview, we ask what we want for him and where we might like him to go. But we can't look at any of them. We haven't been able to look at anything because up until now, he's not eligible for a place. So how can we put down what we want for him when we've not even looked because he's not yet eligible? I don't know, work that one out if you can. But anyway, so within a couple of days we had a look at this place, and it might well be the best thing that ever happened to him. Of course, we don't know this yet because we don't know if we'll get a place there even when we've put it down. They may recommend somewhere else that we've never seen before. This is our son we're talking about. Are we just going to plonk him somewhere that a panel might recommend where we've never seen and he's never seen? I don't think so. So I don't know what to say. All I know is that it's been an absolute minefield, and I feel like when it comes to my next son, we will have a better idea, how things go. And I'm hoping that process wouldn't be as brutal as this process has been, because brutal it's been, not just for him but for us. And I say we have knowledge. We have knowledge of childhood conditions, of caring for children with additional needs. We have knowledge, we know how to fill out forms, we know how to speak for ourselves, and I'm telling you, it's brutal. So if you've had experience of it being brutal for you, let me know in the comments. Let me know, it might make me feel better. And my next son is coming up now, and we've had advice that we should go for an EHCP for him as well. Oh, joy of joy. So we'd be going through all this again. He actually has had some assessments already, but no doubt there will need to be an ed psych involved, one that's private, then another ed psych to then say that it's okay what that ed psych said. And when I say ed psych, I mean educational psychologist. Why would you need two? Is the first educational psychologist report not good enough? Is he not good enough that we need another one? So my son's had to have yet another session and interview today, answering questions. And honestly, it was appalling, really. She was lovely with him, of course they always are. And her questions were super simple. But because he has a communication and language severe delay, she did some numbering and he kind of got that. And then at one point she swapped the numbers around so that 1 was like, this is easy, and now 5 is very tricky. Whereas before it was the other way around, and it was 1 to 10. And he started answering his questions. I thought, no, he's telling her the wrong way round. He actually means very tricky, not very easy. So luckily, because I was there, I could intervene, because it was a choice of, do you want your mum with you or don't? He chose to have me there. If I wasn't there, well, the scoring would be wrong. So again, a lack of understanding at really what level my son is at to even be able to answer the questions to help him access the education he needs. Mind-boggling. The cat's off again. That's mind-boggling. But the last good thing that's come out of all of this, because he wasn't very well, is that we went back to the adoption social worker and said, we feel that he's going to need CAMS. Now, CAMS is a mental health organisation that looks after children and young people. So I feel he's going to need CAMS, he's going to need extra support for anxiety, and actually he's recognised that in himself as well, which is brilliant. That would definitely be the first time for that. And she's told us how we can sort of speed up the process. So he's had such extreme anxiety, he's almost been passing out, right? If we wait, we could put ourselves onto CAMS, but that would be a very long waiting time. So we decided to go and ask if we could go privately, because we do have facilities in the area. And then it was a year, that's right, it was a year to get the pre-assessment, to get the adoption support fund, to pay for it privately. But whichever way you look, it would have been months and months on end for him to access. So we're going to pay as well, I'm sure, pay privately for him to get the assessment, so that he can then go privately to get therapy. And he seems like he's ready for that. I'd say he's ready for that. So those are the twists and turns, and that's just my eldest son. And my younger son has different needs, but will probably really struggle to access employment and independence later as well, but for different reasons. And of course, Tim and I are very keen to make sure that as they get older, they have the support that they need to have. And so we are looking into disability living allowance to be attached to the boys, so that they can maybe access ways of living independently of Tim and I, because I'm 53 and he's 55. And the boys are still teenagers, so we don't want them to be in a situation where, you know, they're with very elderly parents and they can't access things for themselves really. So we've also been doing those forms as well, and we haven't submitted. I'm just doing one for the older one at the moment. We haven't submitted yet, so I might be able to update you on how that goes. So I hope that's interesting to you. This is just my experiences, because you could be somewhere else in the world and the way it works for you is so different. Or you might be in the UK and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, or I'm about to embark on this and help. You might be thinking that. So I hope it's helpful, and I hope you'll check out my channel for some other videos as well. And I'll see you on Fly Little Birds. Thank you.